big story today is that it's looking as if there may be as many as 100,000 people who will walk away from jobs in the NHS and in care homes if they are told they must have a vaccine, which is what they have been told, and they've got to do it by the spring, which means April. Hi, Jamal. Morning. How are you?
Morning, Vanessa. I'm great, thank you.
Good. Tell me what your take is on all of this, on saying to NHS workers 6 months' time and you must be vaccinated or you really can't carry on working in the NHS. What do you think of that?
So, Vanessa, as a privacy professional, I teach people to value the privacy rights that's enshrined to us in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights and also Convention 108. And when it comes to privacy, one of the things that we have the right to privacy over is over our body. I believe it's completely irresponsible, completely against what we stand for as a progressive democratic society to invade people's bodily privacy by forcing them to take an experimental vaccine. Let's not forget, it's an experimental vaccine. It's not proven. And we also have to remind ourselves of the context there.
You know, the idea that there's some kind of enormous human rights infringement about having to show that you've had this jab or this inoculation, that's not true, is it? Because it's been going on for years and years and we're all perfectly comfortable with it.
All right. Well, the thing here is, Vanessa, there are vaccinations that are mandatory and that we accept to protect the public interest or to protect the greater good. But those are not experimental vaccines. They're tried, they're tested, they've been proven, and we understand that they are effective.
I don't think there's such a thing as you describe it, effective vaccine. There's no such thing. You heard the virology professor, if only there was such a thing as a 100% effective vaccine, it would be the most miraculous invention and creation known to man. There's no such thing. But what we see is that vaccines are effective. The idea that this vaccine is more or less experimental than any other is misleading and also designed to make people nervous deliberately, because this vaccine in many different guises has been tested and tested over years and years. The only reason that we were able to get hold of it so quickly was that the entire planet pooled resources, information and research materials in order to get a vaccine out as quickly as possible for COVID-19. It's no less tested and no more experimental than any other effective vaccine. And so when you describe it in that way as experimental, you're implying that it's less well tested, less well researched than any other vaccine. And that's not correct, is it?
Well, it absolutely is, because if you look at the status...
Listen, you can use the word absolutely, but it doesn't give any extra weight or substance to what you say. You use the word absolutely. It's meaningless in that capacity, isn't it? What do you mean? In what way is it more experimental than any other vaccine?
Well, the status of the vaccine is experimental.
What do you mean the status of the vaccine? It's been rolled out to more than 50 million people across the world. So it's because of the efficacy of the vaccine. What is experimental about that?
People do not know the long-term effects of this.
People do know how long it stays in the body. We know what's happening and what's not happening. We also know about how the immunization and the antibodies begin to wane after 6 months after the second jab, and what to do about the booster. We know these things. It's not experimental.
There are still questions about its effectiveness. The challenge I have here is, the professor said earlier, 7 billion of these vaccinations have been rolled out worldwide. The people in the NHS know firsthand the effects of people who are vaccinated, who are not vaccinated. And if they're still choosing not to take the vaccine, for a corrupt government to force them to take these vaccinations and have about 100,000 people walk out from these services, that is going to cause more deaths. That is going to cause more problems in the NHS. And I'm more scared about that than I am about going to the NHS, receiving a service from somebody who might not be double jabbed.
Well, it's interesting to hear what you say. You're absolutely entitled to your point of view, of course. But I'm not sure about the conflation of a corrupt government forcing them. And we know that the vaccine is a non-profit thing. People aren't making money out of it. So to kind of conflate corruption, the vaccine, you're just trying to fan the embers of alarm in a way that is rhetorically loose-lipped. You know, the things you're saying aren't necessarily substantiated by fact, are they?
If we look at the government's behaviour throughout the whole pandemic, they were saying it's one rule for everyone else and it's another rule for them.
There were members of the government. There were members of parliament who you might say played fast and loose with the rules. I'm assuming you're talking about Dominic Cummings. He's an individual who operated in a way that most people found to be absolutely flawed and appalling. And he wasn't doing it in the name of government. So it's not fair, is it, to say that?
Well, I feel completely against forcing people to have vaccines.
Well, they're not being forced to have it. If they don't want to have it, then they don't have to do that job, and they are welcome to find another job to do. Jamal, thank you very much indeed. Interesting to hear your point of view. You may agree with him. You may agree with every word Jamal said. You may think he's absolutely right in every particular. And if that's the case, please feel free to give me a call. And if you don't agree, you can give him a call.